All right, last time we left off around here, I said, here's a template for you to work with and then some stuff for you to add. This has a class called card, and each card is going to hold on to a few pieces of information. What suit is it? Heart, diamond, club, spade. What rank is it? 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, etc. And then just the full name, like, well, it's the jack of clubs or whatever. When it comes to the rank, though, we had to split it into two because sometimes you want to use the number, like jack is 11, queen is 12. Sometimes you want to use the name. And I'm not really happy with that. I might want to rearrange how it's created or what it's called or something. But you can always go back. Then I said your part is this. We're going to have a game called two-card poker where you draw two cards and we determine, are they a flush if they have the same suit? Are they a pair if they have the same rank? And are they a straight if it's one off, like maybe you have a 4 and a 5 or a queen and a jack or something. We don't need to check for two pair, three of a kind, full house, that kind of stuff because it's just two cards. So this means you're going to be using the stuff we've talked about, the class attributes, maybe a class method, or you could even go in and add attributes or methods if you feel like they would help, or you can just go by using the ones that are already there. So today I want to recap that and some things you might have done, and then add another step for where we might go next. When this stuff works this way, you can build up nicely and never have a huge challenge all at once. If I said make a 5-card draw where they get 5, we check the hand, they draw a few, we check the hand, we compare it to the opponent, we see who wins, we break the tie. That would have been a lot, but if you build up slowly, it's not too bad. So let's say I'm going to make the text bigger. I always want to make it readable for people on the videos. So let's say, okay, we're going to check for pair and straight and flush. And the first instinct most of you guys will have is if. You're going to want to say if, blah, 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 colon, do something. Okay, that's not the only way to do it, but let's give that a shot. If card1 dot rank equals card2 dot rank, then we've got a pair. We can say, hey, that's a 4 and a 4, or a jack and a jack, right? We don't just want to say equals with the whole object. We want to say, if you try to say if card 1 equals card 2, then that's only going to be a perfect match, the jack of clubs and the jack of clubs, which is not going to happen since there's only one. But we can test particular properties. And so if I test for the rank being equal, well, there are 4 jacks. And they're different, but there are 4 things that have that same rank. Or there are 4 kings. And so we have a chance of pairing them up. And then you might do the same for a flush. We test if the suit is equal. And then say a flush. And let's run that. So look at that. We just happened to get lucky, I think. And we got 2 2s, so that's a pair. We got something with neither. We got something with neither. And look, we got 2 hearts, and that's a flush. If we were drawing 5 cards, it's pretty unlikely to get a flush because they have to all be the same. But if you're drawing 2, then it actually might be more likely than a straight. I don't know. The good way to test it, if you don't want to just hit run a bunch, is you could take off the shuffle And if you take off the shuffle, then it's going to start in order, so we're guaranteed to have a flush. We're also guaranteed to have a straight if you want to test that next, but I haven't done yet. So that helps. We have something. It's not great because it won't help us in later steps. Like if we have two players and we want to see who wins, this isn't going to set that up. But this is something, and you can type this and go back later. So let's think about the straight. If it's a straight, we're not just going to use one thing equals another thing. We're going to have to use +1 or -1 in there. Like if you want to have a 6 and a 7, and we want to see that they're one off, then we have to test that. And we want to try both directions, because if you get a 6 and a 7, or if you get a 7 and a 6, then that's fine either way. In poker, it doesn't matter what order you get them. Like if you get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's a straight. But if you get 3, 2, 6, 5, 4, that's still a straight. It doesn't matter. So if you were following this pattern, you might say something like card 1 dot. And I'm not going to say rank, because in this setup, rank is like the name, like Jack Queen or something. And we can't do +1 to that. So I'm going to use the word value, which is our name for the numeric thing. So that's 11, 12, etc. Again, I don't love that. I would probably go back and change it. And you can do that. It's something that happens in every program. You give yourself a little starting point, and then you go back and go, wait, that's annoying, I got to change it. So if I say card 2 dot value +1, then this is like, oh, maybe we got a 5 and a 4, and they're one off. I can also do the same thing with the -1 to test if they're the other way. Now this is ugly because it's long, especially on my screen where I've zoomed in to make it readable for a video, but you know. Let's try that. We're unlikely to get it, but let's take off the shuffle so that we're 100% likely to get it. Ace and a king, that gives you flush and straight. Now we could add one more, because in poker there's a straight flush, which beats both of those, and it beats full house and other things. And that would turn it into something very much like the FizzBuzz example we talked about last quarter, where you've got divisible by 3, divisible by 5, and then you have a separate category for both. Just like in that, they started out printing each one, but then they added this idea of, okay, we've got some output that we're going to hold off until the end, and we can do something similar here. But if you had typed this, or something kind of like this, that would satisfy the assignment from last time. Okay? If you type something like this, that would check for a pair, check for straight, and check for a flush, just like I asked. And it would be using the attributes, sometimes messing with them with the +1, and that kind of thing. Now, there are other ways to do it. For example, we could add a method in the card where we take one card and send it another card and say, hey, are you guys matching? Are you guys the same suit? Whatever, and it would return what relationship they have. Sometimes that is a common thing with user-created object. You might define how it does less than or greater than, for example. Or you might define, some kind of test where two objects in a game will tell you whether or not they're colliding. And we could also make a hand. We could say, like, okay, there's a new class called hand, and this player has a couple cards in his hand, and then the hand class has ways of telling what it contains, and it'll tell you, oh, I have a straight, I have a flush, whatever. That's what I would do if it was a bigger game with 5 cards or 7 or 9, just like some poker games have. Or you could make a function and say, hey, I'm going to send you 2 cards and you're going to send me back an answer of what's going on with them. However, if we're keeping it simple, we can do something like this. What I'm going to ask you guys to do next, and like I said, this is very much sequential building up situation where you start with something that's doable, and then you start with something else that's doable, and then you build up to, hey, we've got a big program now. But if I said at the beginning, okay, make 7-card stud, that would be very hard. So my next step, the next thing I want to ask you guys is continue with the 2-card game. Okay, so a player still gets 2 cards, and we still only check for pair, straight, and flush. We don't have to worry about full houses or whatever. But now we have 2 players. Okay, we have 2 players, and maybe one of them has a pair and the other one has nothing, and we say the pair guy wins. Or maybe one of them has a flush and the other guy has a pair, and we say the flush guy wins. Okay, I guess I should check, because in normal poker, flush beats a straight and straight beats a pair. It could be different here. It could be that flush is more likely than straight in this particular universe. I'll check that. But anyway, what we want to do is we want to check one player, then another, then some final resolution. Now, how can we do that? I'm not going to type the whole thing here because I want to let you give an attempt, but I will give one hint, which is in a situation like this where you just say what happened, we're not saving it. You know, we're not writing it down. We're not saying, okay, you have a pair, and then we do the other guy, you have a pair. So we want to assign it to a variable or to a property somewhere. You could add a new thing like, oh, pair equals true, or maybe player one hand equals pair or something. But that would be getting longer, and that would be making things into huge chunks of code that probably don't need to be that much. I might make a function and send it the info, and it'll send it back, and then I can just say player one hand equals hand with these cards. Or combined with that or not, you could say pair equals this, and then it'll return true or false, so pair will be true or false. And then you can use that 2 lines later or something. Let me try this for just a second to show the idea. So I could have these guys, and then I could say like print and then it would say like pair equals true, flush equals true, whatever. That's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it would break things down in a way that might be useful. Who knows? That is up to you. You could make a player class, and then the player class holds on to its current ranking, or you could make just a couple variables, or you could make a function that returns what we need. None of these would be big. It would just be a couple lines each, and actually the easier ones are longer, and it takes skill to squish it down. So think about that, and next time we'll talk about some ways you might do it, and some ways that might make it easier on your future self when you're doing the next step. Thanks.